So now when it comes to this module, see, the paper structure is in a manner that is actually bit tricky. Why I say tricky is now in this one you have, let me see if I can draw. Yeah. So in this one you have 50 marks, right? So you have 50 marks here. And then you have in these two questions, you have 25 marks each. Now, first thing, before you go to the exam, what I always tell students, wherever I teach, whatever I tell, I always tell students one thing. Before you go to the exam, you should have a strategy on how you're going to tackle the paper, right? You should have a strategy on how you're going to tackle the paper. Now, if I ask you a very simple question, what would you do at the exam? I don't know if you can unmute and talk. It would be great. Otherwise, you can type on the chat box. But generally, if I ask students what they would do at the exam, they would say, okay, I would start with the first question, then go to the last two questions. That is a strategy you have, and you can do that strategy at the exam. But when I attempt questions, especially in the strategic or professional level papers, I change my strategy a little bit. Okay. So what I do is I tell students, this is my strategy. You don't have to follow it. This is something that I do at the exam. Has always worked. I've sat for multiple professional exams and obviously close to 15, 16 papers. Then obviously MBA and degree and all of that. But I've never run out of time in a single paper. Okay. Uh, so not running out of time in a single paper doesn't mean that I don't write enough at the paper. That's not the conclusion. You can't conclude that I don't know things of the paper. Wrong conclusion. Rather, I have a strategy before I go to the exam how I'm going to tackle the paper. Right? Don't take this lightly, huh? Because if you don't have a strategy, see, you're studying strategic finance. Where is your strategy to attempt the strategic finance paper? You should have a strategy before you go to the exam. So, my strategy would be to first tackle these two questions. Why, see, you have anyways 15 minutes now for reading and planning time. Use that 15 minutes to identify which of the three questions, two of the three questions you're going to answer. Which of those three questions you're going to answer? Is it going to be question 2, 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 4? What are you going to do? How you decide what you're going to do will depend on the requirement of the question. Now think strategically, yeah? You're given 15 minutes. You have to pick between three questions, which means you can easily allocate 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes for each of the questions, and then decide which question you're going to tackle first. Now see the instructions. Instructions have never said anywhere you have to commence with question 1. Instructions එකේ කොහෙවත් කියලා නැහැනේ. question 1 එකකින් පටන් ගන්න ඕන කියලා. එතකොට you have to be able to decide what is your strength. Think of a T20 cricket match. You will never send a opening bowler as opening batsman. No. Why? His strength is to bowl, not to bat. It is like asking that Vaibhav Suryavanshi, that 15-year-old kid, to come last in batting. No point, no? So you have to play to your strength. So here is the opportunity for you to play to your strength. Now one of you might ask, okay, sir, what if section A is my strength? I will still say don't go to section A. Right? Don't read section A in these 15 minutes. My strategy, yeah? I'm not saying you have to follow this. You can decide what you want to do. Don't read for the 15 minutes, don't read section A. Why? It's a long question. No? By the time you read that, 15 minutes is done. You can't select between the three questions, then you're using the writing time to select the three questions. You have lost time. Hey, this section A now, let's be honest with you, everybody, I'm not saying the 7 of you or 8 of you in the class, but in general sense, I'm talking about general 15,000 students who sit for a CA exam. Everybody is not 100% fluent with the English language also. No? They will take a bit of time to read and understand. You read a question that is this big, right? You read a question that is this big. For example, look at section A, the question. It's big, 3 pages long. 15 minutes will go for you to read and understand. So don't read section A in the first 15 minutes. Huh? Now, some of your other lecturers might have told you something else. You do as they are saying. I'm not asking you to do what I am saying. I'm saying what I will do. Okay, you can decide what you want. So don't read section A. Go to section B. Decide which 3 questions you're going to do. Strategy done. Okay. Once you decide the strategy, once you decide the 2 questions, you have to rank question number 1, question number 2. What is your best strength? That is question number 1. What is your next best strength? Question number 2. Question number 3, karanna mane. Once you decided, na? I don't go back and feel, I think I should do question 3. No. Don't change halfway through. This 15 minutes, you have to properly read and pick which question you're going to do. I'll tell you a shortcut to do this. Okay? Because before we go into the paper, you have to understand how to do the paper. No? So what I do at the exam is I quickly go to the, it's a bit slow when I do it like this, but I quickly go to the requirement. Huh? I don't read the question also. I look at this question, calculate the total incremental contribution arising from proposed short-term contracts. Seems like something I know, contribution I know. Incremental, I think I should be able to figure out. Should be okay. Analyze strategic implications of accepting the proposed contracts with reference to, okay, these ones. This also looks okay. Recommend with justification something about the proposal. 8 marks. Okay. Something that I probably can do. I'm just assuming students' mindset. Huh? This one says calculate the post-tax cost of debt for PHP by determining something. Based on your calculations, recommend which debt instrument is more suitable. So this is about debt financing. The moment you read debt, you should understand, okay, are you good with debt or not? Evaluate proposed acquisitions as a strategic option. So this is mixing debt finance with acquisitions. Are you good with acquisitions? If you are good, something that you should consider. Then I will quickly go to this question here. Annualize the after-tax financing cost of the 7-year financing period. How financing options would affect capital structures. So this is cost of capital and capital structures. Now it's your choice whether you want to do this question or not. Now let's assume that you selected question 2 and 3. Okay, let's assume you like debt and acquisitions and you like incremental contribution, right? So then you decide, okay, this is my best question. I'm going to start with this question. Okay. Then once you've decided what I do the exam, I read the requirement, I understand what the topic is. Obviously, you should be able to relate, no? If I understand what topic is and if I like the topic, then I will read the paragraph. I will read question number 2 and I will say, okay, this is what I like to do. And I'm going to read, make notes, right? Highlight the key points, right? Underline whatever you want to do. And then I will put a small structure for my paper. I'll say, okay, what I need to do here. 5 minutes and done. Or I'll use around 6 minutes and do it. Then I go to the next question during the reading time, read the question, underline the key points, and have my answers mentally ready. Or if you can have time, jot down and keep what to do. Then once they say, okay, writing time starts now, no need to read the case again. Don't read the case again. What did I say? Don't read the case again. When you read it once, it has to be here. You have to mark everything that is important. Now you can't say the whole case is important, no. For example, a Sri Lankan manufacturer of specialized construction materials supplied primarily large infrastructure. You might think, okay, Sri Lankan manufacturer is important in case there is some exchange rate something. Company operates a single production facility, that is probably important. Capacity is important. Then relying on long-term contracts with predictable volumes and stable margins, probably important. So you will highlight those things and you will keep reading. Pick the key points. Then when you start writing, you already know what the case is about. And when you're reading the story, okay, what I suggest you to do is build a picture in your mind. Okay, you have to be in the question. You have to live inside the question, right? So when I'm reading this question is a manufacturer of specialized construction materials, I'm already in a cement factory. I don't know whether this is cement or not. I haven't read the whole question, but I don't know whether this is cement or not. I'm assuming. So I assume, okay, I'm in like a Holcim factory. I'm standing in the middle and I'm seeing a massive factory now. I have one production facility with annual capacity of 120,000 tons. So I'm seeing a massive factory now. And then I'm saying premium supplier relying on long-term contracts. So then I'm thinking, okay, I'm supplying to governments. I can see this. I'm standing in the middle of Holcim and I'm seeing this whole thing out there. Visualize the question. When you do that, you're in the question, you will understand it, you will remember it better. You will remember it better. Even after you go home, you might remember. So make sure you do that, right? Once you're done with section B, which is 25 marks, which means you take 1.5 hours to do that 2 questions. You have 1.5 hours then remaining, right? You have 1.5 hours remaining to do section A. More than enough. 1.5 hours, right? So when you go to section A, now only the first time you're going to look at section A. First time. What do? Straight go to the requirement. Read the requirement in section A. Right? Why I say read the requirement in section A? Okay, now this is your requirement. Calculate the revised WACC for the company based on target capital structure. Determine how the proposed shift to one-to-one debt to equity structure alters company's financial risk profile. Okay. Assess how the proposed financial strategy interacts with sustainability objectives, regulatory exposure, long-term value creation, and formulate a reasoned judgment on the trade-offs faced by the board of directors. 6 marks. Evaluate the after-tax cash flows from year 5 to 12 to derive NPV of manufacturing and logistics hub project. 17 marks. Evaluate 2 key limitations. Accounting practices that could undermine effective decision making during the integrated hub transformation. Design a high-level strategic performance management framework, SPM, that AIS should adapt to support the new operating model. Your framework should prioritize no more than 4 performance dimensions. Explicitly address one potential control or governance risk arising from increased automation or sustainability reporting. Evaluate how AIS adoption of AI-enabled planning systems could reshape its management, accounting, and finance functions. Nuance distinguish between short-term disruptions and long-term capability gains. Implications for forecast credibility and managerial accounting. Now, when you look at this question, my suggestion. Part A is independent. Part B is probably dependent on part A. Part C is independent of A and B, as to my understanding. Part D is independent, part E is independent, part F is independent. Which means, now let's face reality. You're an accountant, I'm an accountant. I like numbers, you like numbers. So what I would do is I would start off with part A, that is 14 marks. My target from 14 marks is minimum 10 marks. Minimum 10 marks. Put a target for yourself. Minimum 10 marks. In section A, section B, I forgot to tell you that, but put a target. Then my next best alternative for me is part C. Now, do I have to do part B and then come to part C? I don't have to. There is no link between these two. Sometimes they will say, as per the computations in part B, then there is a link. Now, metana link එකක් නැහැ. What you can then do is independently work 17 marks. How much you want from 17? How much you want? Let's say 12 marks. Target එක. හරිද? So 10 plus 12, 22. 22. Now, think of the mentality at the exam. Huh? See, ideally, exam is a strategic thing you have to deal with. Huh? I always tell students, you have to prepare well before the exam. Not by studying, by understanding what you're going to do at the exam. Because that is short time. තැන ගිහිල්ලා ස්ට්‍රැටජයිස් කරන්න බෑ මෙහෙම කරමුද එහෙම කරන්න බෑ වෙලාවක් නැහැ. So 3 hours you have to strategize. Now once I secure 14 and 17, how much is 14 and 17? That is around 32 marks, right? 31. My math is also bad now. 15, yeah, 31 marks. So out of the 50, you have tackled 31 marks. You should be happy. Now you can take a break also. Okay? 10 and 12 done, 22. Then you select which is your next best alternative. Maybe you are good at this, or maybe you're good at this, maybe you're good at this. Tackle this with 6 marks. Try to secure 3 marks. Try to secure 2 marks. Try to secure 3 marks. Try to secure 2 marks. Done. How much are you securing? 10, 12, 22, 25, 30, 32. 32 out of 50. More than enough, man. More than enough. Anivaryen pass. You can't fail. You can't fail. How to fail? Yeah, I showed you. You can't fail. Now you might be thinking, sir, කොහොමද sir අපිට 10ක් ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ question එකේ? පුළුවන්. Very simple. Right? The problem is think of this paper as a cake. When you have a birthday, cake එක තියාගෙන මෙහෙම කන්න නෑනේ. මුළු cake එකම. What do? You cut it into small pieces. කපලා තමයි කන්නේ cake එක. So that's the same thing I'm doing here. Deconstructing the paper into pieces I can eat. Okay? This is very important. Very important. You do what I am saying. You should get through the paper. Okay? Now I think we spent almost 20 minutes understanding the strategy for the paper. That is good. Okay? Don't think of wasted time. This is important. Right. Now today, I'm going to spend the next 1.5 hours. I have only 2 hours with you due to some time limitations. I'm not going to go to section B, though I said we'll start from section B, but I want to focus more on the 50-mark question today. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to read it together. We're going to read it together, and I'm going to show you how you do the analysis of the case study. Okay? So AIS, now don't try to pronounce Akilada, Akulada, Eva, so go to AIS. It's a Sri Lankan listed group operating across industrial manufacturing, third-party logistics, and technology-enabled supply chain services. Now you have to understand here, they are doing 3 services. Industrial manufacturing. Industrial manufacturing. Okay? Then they are doing third-party logistics. Highlight when? Okay. Third-party logistics. Technology-enabled supply chain. Technology-enabled supply chain. Now you remember, no, they had some in the requirement, something about AI. That is only this. Now it has to click. That is the importance of reading the requirement. නැත්නම් මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? You read the whole case. It was requirement gilla balano. It was you remember, shit. Did I read something like this in the exam scenario? Then you go back up. So case again. You can't do that. You will waste time. Normal complaint I get from students is, sir, vela madi unna sir karanda. Amaru is a paper එක. එහෙම අමාරු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? First thing you have to do, read the requirement. මොකක්ද වෙන්න ඕනේ? Question. Then you come and see, okay, this is what part A was asking, this is what part B was asking. This is linked to part A, this is linked to part B. Case එකෙන්ම mark කරගෙන යන්න. That is your strategy, yeah? Okay? Historically, AIS has followed a conservative financial strategy, funding growth primarily through retained earnings. They are funding through retained earnings. Pecking order theory, while maintaining low gearing, stable dividend payouts, strong balance sheet resilience. That is low gearing in the sense very low debt to equity ratio. Now you remember they had changed the debt to equity ratio 1:1 or something in the requirement, part A. That links to this maintaining low gearing. So which means in the start they had low gearing, somewhere during the case they would increase their gearing. We have to figure out that also while reading the case. In recent years, competitive pressure has intensified as regional competitors have invested heavily in automation. So competition is investing in automation and integrated logistic platforms, some kind of a service, enabling faster delivery cycles, improved cost efficiency, greater pricing flexibility, advantages of these things. At the same time, volatile energy and logistics costs, like today, electricity cost is increasing like out the roof. Petrol price, හැමදාම නැගිට්ටහම message එකක් එනවා අන්න රුපියල් 20ක් වැඩි වෙලා කියලා. That's the kind of scenario here. So together with increasingly stringent sustainability, traceability, carbon reporting requirements imposed by multinational customers, there is a big fad, I would say, FAD, fad in the world to talk about sustainability. Now here also they are putting sustainability, carbon reporting. We went through this our recordings. Go and see. Multinational customers have challenged AIS's existing operating model and margin stability. So they've been doing good before, now they're having small issues. Okay, no problem. In response, the board of directors of AIS has proposed a transformational investment in an AI-enabled integrated manufacturing and logistics hub. Now this is their investment, AI-enabled integrated manufacturing and logistics hub. Okay. This project would consolidate several legacy facilities into a single site, introduce automated warehousing and advanced planning systems, and embed circular economy principles aimed at reducing waste, energy usage, and carbon intensity. You remember, no? Circular economy, I said cradle to cradle, that circle we drew, right? While the project is expected to enhance operating efficiency, resilience, and sustainability positioning, it represents a step change in both AIS's operating model and financial strategy, raising strategic and financial risk considerations for the board. Okay. In the financial position and capital structure of AIS is given market value of equity 24 million, market value of long-term debt 6 million. Now, if you do a quick computation, do it quickly, you can calculate your debt to equity ratio. Debt to equity ratio is 6:24, which if you take as a ratio debt over equity, 6/24, this is a quarter, right? 1/4, no? So that is 0.25, 1:4. Okay. So this is your debt to equity ratio. The existing pre-debt carries a pre-tax cost of 10%, pre-tax cost of 10%. Capital allowances are granted on a straight line basis with the balancing allowance or charge arising on disposal. AIS currently levered equity beta. What is levered equity beta? equity beta. So we had two betas, no, or three betas. We learned something called asset beta. We learned something called equity beta. We learned something called debt beta, right? Levered is this. Geared beta. We learned that. And its weighted average cost of capital is approximately 11.5%. WACC. Existing debt facilities include interest cover and gearing covenants, which management expects to remain manageable if the proposed investment proceeds. Okay. Now they're giving you details of the proposed investment. The proposed hub requires an initial investment of 12 million at year naught, comprising 10 million in buildings and infrastructure, capital allowances over 20 years, which then means my capital allowances over 20 years is basically your depreciation. So 10,000 divided by 20, which will give you 500. 2 million in specialized automation equipment, capital allowances over 4 years. So you can divide it by 4. This is 250, no? Sorry, 500 again. 500. The project has an economic life of 12 years. And at the end of 12 years, the estimated residual value is going to be 2 million relating entirely to buildings. That is this 10 million. The automation equipment is expected to have no residual value. Any balancing allowance or charge is taxable at 30%. So this will go back to some of the previous learnings you've had. Then you go further down. Operating cash flow and working capital assumptions. Real operating cash flows before tax are expected to be 2.2 million per annum from real cash flows. Before inflation. 2.2 million per annum from year 1 to 4. Year 5 onwards, real operating cash flows are expected to grow at 3%. General inflation is forecast at 6%, giving a nominal growth rate from year 5 at 9.18%. Nominal operating, what is nominal operating cash flows? That is with inflation. For years 1 to 5 are as follows. So they've given you year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What they are saying is year 5 onwards, this is going to grow at 9.18%. Corporate income tax is levied at 30% and payable in the same year. Working capital of 50 million is required at the start of the project. Working capital increases by 50 million at the beginning of each year from year 1 to 4 and remains constant thereafter. So working capital is not increasing and is fully recovered at the end of year 12. Unless stated otherwise, all operating cash flows occur at the end of each year. No problem. Basic NPV. Discount rate and valuation information. For investment appraisal purposes, the board has approved a project discount rate of 13%, reflecting an additional margin for execution and financing risk associated with the strategic transformation. The discount factor to discount year 12 amounts back to the end of year 4 at 13% is 0.376. So what they're saying is you can bring it back to year 4 at 0.376. The present value of nominal net cash flows from year 0 to year 4 discounted at 13% is negative 6494. So which means they have already computed for you. They've already computed for you the NPV, not NPV rather, present value of this is already given. That is that 6494. So we have to start with year 5 onwards. That is why they are saying in the question, year 12 amounts back to the end of year 4. You bring it back to end of year 4. I will tell you alternative ways of working, but let's see. Okay, see how long the question is. By the time you come to this part, you've forgotten what the top parts are also. As I said, build a picture in your mind. I hope you've built it. To finance the investment, the CFO has proposed issuing sustainability linked long term debt, increasing a company's target capital structure to a debt to equity ratio of 1 is to 1. 1 is to 1. The expected pre tax cost of new debt is 11.5%. Market data indicates a risk free rate of 10% and a market risk premium of 6%. So looks like you might want to use something like a CAPM here with the market data given. Market risk free rate is 10%, risk premium is 6%. You're going to move your equity to debt is 11%. And new tax pre-tax cost of debt is 11.5. A company has historically maintained a stable dividend policy, attracting income-focused institutional investors. However, the scale of the investment and increased leverage may require a reassessment of dividend policy. As an alternative or complement to debt financing, the board has also considered equity-based funding options such as right issue or institutional placements. We learned this under equity, no? Equity-based funding options, rights issues, institutional placements, subject to regulatory compliance and careful market communication. Why is careful market communication important? Because there's something called signaling effect. In signaling effect, we learned that using retained earnings is the best. It gives positive news to the market saying that you have cash. The least best alternative is equity. If you go and ask for equity, the first assumption that comes to your mind is you don't have retained earnings, you don't have sufficient capacity to borrow. Your balance sheet is not strong enough to borrow, or banks are not willing to borrow. So there's a bad signal that goes out to the market to say, okay, you're looking for equity. There's also a debate as to how the equity market may respond to the project announcement. Some directors expect the market to recognize the project's long-term strategic and sustainability benefits, while others caution that short-term share price movements may be driven by investor sentiment, technical trading behavior, or broader market efficiency considerations rather than underlying fundamentals. The board recognizes that short-term market reactions may differ from projects' long-term impact on overall business value and market perception. There's some question about that also, right? About short-term reactions and long-term achievements. Management accounting and organizational context. The board has noted that AIS finance function has historically been compliance focused with annual budgeting cycles, limited use of rolling forecasts, and minimal integration of non-financial or sustainability metrics into decision making. Previous attempts to introduce advanced analytics and non-financial KPIs were scaled back due to concerns over loss of control and forecast volatility. Management accountants are therefore expected to play a central role in supporting the transformation through strategic insight, performance management, and decision support as AIS transitions to a more technology and sustainability driven operating model. Assume you are the CFO and are required to use your experience to advise the board of directors on the following. Okay. Part A. Part A. Calculate the revised WACC for AIS based on the proposed target capital structure. Keyword for me in this is not anything what they have highlighted on. Keyword for me is this word and. Keyword. You might be wondering what the hell is Nabeel talking about. Okay. Why I tell students to highlight the word and is, you have to highlight it. At the exam also highlight the word and. And means something else also. Which means I can say pen and marker. කියන දෙකක් තියෙනවා. And කියපුවාම දෙකක්. Or තුනක්. Or anything more. කවදාවත් මෙහෙම කියන්නේ නැහැනේ. Pen and කටවාගෙන ඉන්නේ නැහැ නේ ඊපස්සේ. So pen and marker is the same as calculate and determine. So you have two things to do in this question. What students will do, I'll tell you. I'll tell you now itself. One reason for students to fail is calculate කරලා ඔහේ ඉන්නවා සතුටින්. ඇයි කරානේ calculation ටික. ඉවරයිද වැඩ. Wrong. Wrong understand. The moment you do the calculation, good. හොඳයි කරපු එක. But determining how the proposed shift to debt to equity structure alters finance risk profile අවතක වෙලා. මේ මහන්සිද ලියලා calculations ටික කරලා. That's why I said target 10 marks. ඔය calculation කරලා marks 10ක් ගන්න බෑනේ. Okay. So first thing, we'll do the revised WACC calculation. Then we're going to write how the debt to equity structure alters the risk profile. I have to keep track of time also constantly. Right? So we'll move to the whiteboard. May මොනවාරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවද? Any questions? Any questions from you all? Students? Are you all okay? Happy there? So far? Happy? Are you all understanding what I am saying? Okay? Dear students of mine. Good. Okay. One says yes. Thumbs up, Pelagiri. Okay. Now, the question was asking us, I have to load my question here, otherwise it's a little difficult. Just going to load it on my laptop. Give me 1 minute. Yeah. So calculate the revised WACC. So when they say calculate the revised WACC, first thing I want you to do, exam උත් මෙහෙම කරන්න. වෙන දේවල් කරන්න යන්න එපා. When they say WACC, first thing I want you to do is write down the equation for WACC. Okay, you might think I'm mad. It's okay. It's okay. Right? First thing you do is write down the equation for WACC. What is the equation for WACC? Equation for WACC is cost of equity into value of equity plus cost of debt post tax into value of debt divided by value of equity plus value of debt. Correct? No? Now, why I'm asking you to do this is, right? Again, strategy. The moment I do this, I know in my head, I have to find cost of equity. I have to find the value of equity. I have to find cost of debt post tax. I have to find value of debt. 4 pieces of information I have to find. Now, we'll start with cost of equity. Right? So I'm doing a small revision with the paper. So now I'm looking at cost of equity. Now think for yourself, cost of equity. Cost of equity. Cost of equity, cost of equity, what we do, we have multiple methods to calculate. Cost of equity, multiple methods to calculate. Multiple methods. No. So I don't know if I told you this. It's too late for me to tell you. I hope I have already told you. If I have not told, I'm very sorry, but I should have told you this before. You should take a A4 paper, fold it into 2, then you have 4 sides. A4 paper, fold into 2, you have 4 sides. In those 4 sides, you should have listed all your formulas. Then today's session is very easy. Hey, අර කොලේ ගත්තා. Look, first side, cost of equity. Second side, තියෙනවා. එච්චරයි. If you don't have that piece of paper, මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? Session by session ගිහිල්ලා formula එක හොයන්න වෙනවා. අමාරුයි ඒක කරන්න. So, cost of equity, multiple methods you can use. You can use your dividend valuation model. You can use dividend valuation model with growth. Then you can use capping. Now, when you are reading the question, I told you something, no? They have given you market risk premium and risk-free rate. Had they given, they had mentioned dividend is stable, but they have never mentioned how much the dividend is. So then automatically this gets disqualified. Never use කරන්න බෑනේ. එතකොට we have to use only CAPM. Now this has to happen fast in the exam, thinking. Okay? So මෙතන CAPM එක හොයන්න වෙනවා. How do you find CAPM now? How do you find CAPM? ලියන්න question equation එක. CAPM is cost of equity is equals to මටත් අමතක වුණා. Risk free rate plus equity beta into RM minus RF. Correct? Correct? Then cost of equity is equal to risk free rate, equity beta, risk. So this is called risk premium. I think we learned that. Risk premium. So then exam question එකේ risk free rate එක තිබ්බා. Risk premium එකක් තියෙනවා. So what is missing? What is missing? The only element that is missing is equity beta. කොච්චර ලේසිද? කොච්චර ලේසිද? හරිද? So now what happens? එතකොට risk free rate එක දාගන්න. How much was the risk free rate? I think that was 10%. 10% plus equity beta. ඒව දන්නේ. Then RM minus RF is your risk premium. මේකත් තිබ්බ question එකේ 6%. Done. කොච්චර ලේසිද? Fill in the blanks අනේ. my 4-year-old 5-year-old kid, now she is 5. 5-year-old kid to fill in the blanks කරන්නේ ස්කෝලේ. අපිත් කරන්නේ ඒකයි. Same thing. Same thing. Okay? Now fill in the blanks. Beta equity. ප්‍රශ්න දෙන්නේ beta equity හොයන්න වෙනවා. Okay? Beta equity හොයන්න වෙනවා. How do you find beta equity? How do you find beta equity? How do you find beta equity? So how do you find beta equity? මතක නැනේ. මතක නැනේ. Beta equity. We have to use the beta equity format or formula which says beta asset is equals to beta equity into value of equity divided by value of equity plus value of debt 1 minus t. මතක නේද? Okay? This is the formula we're going to use. I told you we assume sometimes beta debt is 0. මෙතන beta debt දීලත් නැහැ. So we assume it's 0. Now substitution, no? Substitution. Now ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්නේ, what is beta asset? Now you see where we're going, no? We started with this simple equation. We had to find beta equity. Now to find beta equity, I can't simply find beta equity because I don't know what beta asset is. එතකොට මොකද කරන්නේ? Find beta asset first. Now to find beta asset, if you can remember carefully, I gave you 3 steps, no? I said first ungear the beta, re-gear the beta, and then find cost of equity. I don't know if you can recall, but asset beta. Now I'm going to find asset beta. Asset beta using what? Using your current information. Current information. What does asset beta say? Asset beta assumes that we have no debt within the company. Right? No debt within the company. So it removes the gearing out. So asset beta is equals to equity beta. The question, exam question says, somebody had said no, levered equity beta. I can't remember the value. I'm just going back to check it. Levered equity beta. How much was it? Somebody can remember? Levered equity beta is 0.85. Levered equity beta is 0.85. So I thought to make a 0.85 into value of equity. Value of equity, you remember I did that simplification for you, no? Simplification. What was the simplification I did for you? 1:4, right? So equity is 4 divided by 4 plus 1 into 1 minus 0.3. Right? 4 plus 1 into 1 minus 0.3. Now we will calculate this. 4 plus 1 won't give you 0.25, no? That's fine, we'll use it. Okay. So 4 plus 0.7, 4 divided by 4.7. Okay. So you get asset beta is equals to 0.72. Okay, to 2 decimals, 0.72. Now, what does this 0.72 mean? 0.72 means in the event I don't have debt, the total risk I face as a business is 0.72. 0.72. Arine? Okay. Now I'll speed up a little bit. Quickly go through. Right. So 0.72 asset beta. Now I can rework based on the current or the revised structure. What is the revised structure? 1:1. Based on the revised structure, what is my potential equity beta? So then you rework this. Rework. Come on, rework. 0.72 is equals to equity beta into now value of equity. Now what is the value of equity? 1:1. 1 divided by 1 plus 1 into 1 minus 0.3. So now you can work out equity beta. Work out equity beta now. 1 plus 0.7 divided by 1. Then you take it other side. 0.72 divided by 0.58. You get something like 1.22 approximately, yeah? Rounding off. You might have used all the decimals, then you will get a different answer, but 1.22 roughly estimated value. Balan. Balan. Okay. 1.22. Now what happened? Now what happened? Now you have to, don't get lost, huh? Okay. Now what were you trying to do? You're trying to find out equity beta. Did you find it? You found it. Anna Satut. You found it. Very simple, no? Very simple. This is not like audit and all. This is not like audit 10 that risk and all those subjects. This is very simple. I don't do difficult things in life. Okay, I don't have space here, so I'm going to continue on this side. This is working. I don't have space, so I'm continuing on this side. So 10 plus 1.22 into 6%. Cost of equity. Cost of equity is equal to how much? 1.22 into 6%. I don't think you will. When I was teaching, you must have thought, sir is doing only easy things in class. Same thing only I'm doing here also. So you get 17.32%. 17.32%. 17.32%. Now what happened? Now what happened? Now what happened? Now you can go here. Cost of equity kadanno. Method then 1.732 into value of equity 1 plus cost of debt, I don't know, I'll come back to that, divided by 1 plus 1. Don't try to do massive things in life. Just very simple. Very simple. Okay? See, I told you, no, life is filling the blanks. අර සමහර කට්ටිය දානවා අර ස්ටේටස් එකේ romantic messages වගේ. ඒව නෙවෙයි මේව. Filling the blanks. You will fill the blank space in my heart. That is not what I'm talking about. This is filling the blanks of equations. Now you know this cost of equity දැම්ම දාගෙන ගියා මෙතන value of debt එක 1 දැම්ම. Only one more thing to find in life, man. Cost of debt 1 minus t. කොච්චර අමාරු වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද මේවා. Huh? How difficult can it be? How difficult can it be? Cost of debt post-tax. Just asking students, you all are with me, right? Understanding. Deshapriya, Hashini, Kavisha, Ridma. Okay? तब कहो दे क्लास Harshani, sorry, Sivakaran. Well, okay? Good? Right. Okay. Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts so far? No, right? Okay. Okay, good. Now cost of debt 1 minus t. What is the problem here? How do you find cost of debt? Very simple. They had mentioned in the question the new debt is coming at a particular rate. They said the new debt. What was the new debt coming at? They had mentioned the new debt was coming at 11.5%. Expected pre-tax cost of new debt is 11.5%. Pre-tax cost of debt 11.5%. 11.5%. So if this is 11.5%, then what happens? Post-tax, post-tax. I need post-tax no here. Post-tax is a very simple computation. Post-tax when 11.5 into 1 minus t. 1 minus t. Very simple computation. So 11.5 into 0.7 is how much? 8.05. I don't know if my calculation is correct. Check. 8.05. 8.05%. So you can substitute 8.05% here, which is 0.0805. Now work out your WACC. එච්චරයි. තරල දේ කරන්න තියෙන්නේ. Okay. Now, how much is this? Someone can do the computation for me. 0.1732. I forgot my calculator. Into 1 plus 0.0805 into 1 divided by 2, you get 12.685. 0.12685, which is approximately 12.7%. Or you can say 13 or whatever you want to say. This is probably, I think, why they discounted at 13%. They had discounted their cash flows at 13%, no? Probably why. Okay? Now, I'll ask you a very simple question. What was the old WACC? Old WACC. Old WACC. Old WACC. Old WACC was how much? If I'm not mistaken, it was something like 11.5%. Check and see, yeah? The question said 11.5%. I read it. The first page or second page, I can't remember. Old WACC was 11.5%. New WACC. New WACC. 12.7%. What does this mean? Anyone wants to say? What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? This has obviously meant very good, Deshapriya. Risk has increased. Risk has increased. Has it actually increased? Has it actually increased? Yes. Why? Gearing was 0.25 before. Now how much is it? Point? Not point also. Now it's 1:1. 1. So etakota Risk has increased from in terms of gearing. So gearing has increased. So risk has increased. And probably there is some business risk increase also due to that new investment and whatnot, right? They had mentioned that in the question. So the new WACC at 12.7, you can write a small sentence at the last. The new WACC at 12.7% is greater, the new WACC at 12.7% is greater than the original WACC, of 11.5%, indicating 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 an increase in financial risk, an increase in financial risk, an increase in financial risk due to higher gearing levels, due to higher gearing levels. Okay. How many marks do you think you would have got out of the 14? How many marks? I think you would have got at least 8 marks. 8 to 9 marks. Are 8 marks max. Are was it easy? Was it easy? Guys, was it easy? Okay. Okay, very good. I hope you all are happy, yeah? Most important thing, happy. Be happy. Okay? Now, I hope you all are not looking at this and saying, oh, me, I don't know any of these things. Bye, Vendepa. Okay? Bye, Vendepa. Right, good. We are all learning. Right, shall we go to the next part? Can't go to the next part. Why? You remember, no? I did something called end. And determine how the proposed shift to a one-to-one debt-to-equity structure alters AIS financial risk profile. Okay, we'll write some sentences there. We'll write some sentences. Okay, at a point form you can write. I will give you brief ones. Okay, first one. Point number one, you can say. Point number one, you can say. Financial risk, financial risk, financial risk. Put a dash and say increasing gearing, increasing gearing, increasing gearing from 0.25, from 0.25 to 1:1 or to 1 basically. Increasing gearing from 0.25 to 1 significantly increases leverage. Use these words, leverage. Number two, you can say, next right. Number two, earnings volatility, earnings volatility, earnings volatility. Increased, dash and you can say, increased gearing levels, will increase the interest obligation the interest obligations, the interest obligations of the company, of the company, and therefore, and therefore will impact, will impact the earnings volatility for shareholders, for shareholders. Right? So when you have increased levels of gearing, there's increased interest cost that you have to cover. So which means then earnings potential for shareholders will reduce, right? Third point, you can say interest. They had mentioned something about the interest cover, right? And covenants. So you can say interest cover and covenants. Interest cover and covenants. Increased levels of debt, increased levels of debt will bring about, will bring about increased interest expense, increased interest expense. Increased interest expense. Uh, reducing the interest cover ratio, reducing the interest cover ratio and possibly impacting, possibly impacting possibly impacting any agreed covenants, any agreed covenants. What are covenants? Covenants are like these let's say targets that are given when you take a loan. For example, now when we went into IMF, where central bank were given some targets. No? Now they have achieved those targets. Are 650 million මොන හරි එනවලු මම දන්නේ but ඒවා ආවොත් අපිට කොහොමත් benefit එකක් නැහැ. But uh, we are still struggling as a country. So 600 is coming apparently, but they've achieved those covenants. So ඒ වගේ covenants දෙනවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔය loan එකක් ගත්තාම. Your expense ratio to revenue ratio, එතකොට current asset to current liability ratio ඒව ටික maintain කරගන්න ඕන. Now, one classic example is one of the companies that are on the Colombo Stock Exchange. Potential delisting by end of this year if they don't achieve some criteria. So, එතන achieve කරේ නැත්නම් they'll be delisted. I don't want to mention the company's name. You can figure out. Okay. If you want the industry, it is a manufacturing industry. Manufacturing industry. Okay. Good. Right. We can do a conclusion after that. You can say overall, the shift to a 1:1 debt to equity ratio, to a 1:1 debt to equity ratio, significantly increases the financial risk of AIS, the financial risk of AIS. Pulls up and say, in response to this, in response to this, AIS will have to strengthen the financial risk management, and ensure to deliver suitable returns to shareholders. Okay, so I think that was a good question, no? Good one. I hope you're as happy as I am. හරිනේ තේරුණා නේද? Okay, any questions before we go to the next part? Students, any questions before we go to the next part? Everyone happy? කො සමහර කට්ටිය කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. Hashini, are you okay? Kavisha, good. Kavisha, Deshapriya, okay. Husama, and who else is there? That's all. Oh, කට්ටිය අඩු වෙලා. 1 2 3 4 5. Good, okay. Right. Very good. Now we go to the next part then. Now I think I told you next part I'm going to work out is the after tax cash flows, huh? Because others will run out of time. 10:12 already the time is. I have to finish by 11. Okay, evaluate the after tax cash flows from years 5 to 12 to derive the NPV of the integrated manufacturing and logistics hub project. You get that mark, 17 marks. How much do you think you scored in this? 10, 14 ne? Kiyak හම්බුණාද? Let's assume 10 නෙවෙයි අපි අතරම 12ක් විතර ගත්තා කියලා. 12ක්. සුපිරි. මෙහෙම හිතන්න. 12ක් කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම පාස් මාර්ක් එකෙන් කාලක්. හොඳයිනේ. How much is the pass mark? 50 no? 50. 12 out of 50 කියන්නේ almost 25%, right? Almost 25%. Solid. එහෙම හිතන්න exam එකේ. 50කින් 12ක් ගත්තා කියන්නේ 125ක් අරගෙන. pass mark එක. Good. Good. දැන් තව 125ක් ගත්තා නම් හරි මේකෙන්. මේකෙන් මම හිතන ඇත්තටම 15ක් විතර ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කැල්කියුලේෂන් විතරයිනේ තියෙන්නේ. හරියට කරා නම් 15ක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. try එකක් දෙමු ඉතින් 15ක් කරා. Evaluate the after tax cash flows from years 5 to 12. මතක නේද? 5 to 12 කියන්නේ year 4 1 to 4 already they had computed the present value. ඒ ටික all done, huh? To derive the NPV of the integrated manufacturing and logistics hub project. හරි? Simple. Simple කියන්නේ මෙහෙම simple. එතකොට මේක done. Okay, NPV. Then අර වැක් වගේ we have to write the NPV equation, no? NPV is equals to present value of cash flows minus initial investment. Right? Now, in this question, do we know the initial investment? Do we know the initial investment? What was the initial investment given? What was the initial investment given? $12 million, no? 12 million, right? So if your total initial investment is 12 million, what is your NPV is what they're asking. Very simple, no? Very simple. So I'm going to have an initial investment of 12 million. I mean, this is actually 12 billion, no? 12,000 million, ne? 12,000 billion කියන්නේ 12 million, ne? 12 million. Okay. Now, how do you work this out? They're saying lot of things, huh? Lot of things they're saying. So present value of cash flows, from year 0 to year 4, they have already computed also. Year 0 to year 4, present value of net cash flows. From year 0 to year 4, discounted at 13%. This is page 3 of the question. Has been calculated as negative 6494. So which means this present value of cash flows, we have to break into two parts. Okay. Year 0 to year 4. Year 0 to year 4 කියන්නේ initial investment එක already අරගෙන ඇත. So which means making I 12 million deduct කරන්න යන්න එපා. එතකොට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා double counting. එතකොට මෙතන 12 million එක already deducted, will come back to that. එතකොට මතක තියාගන්න. නැත්නම් I 6494. මෙතන 6494 negative. හරි negative 6494. එතකොට year 5 to year 12 තමයි අපි හොයන්න වෙන්නේ. So this 12 million මෙතනින් දාන්න already included here. Already included. You can't forget now. එතකොට year 5 to year 12. How do you do that? How do you do that? Good. Year 5 to year 12, cash flows were not given. We have to find out. There are multiple ways of doing it. Okay. Let's do the very basic one first. එතකොට shortcuts ටික පෙන්නන්නම් පස්සේ. But just try to do the basic one. Basic ones. I'll open an Excel on my computer so I can quickly work out the numbers. So first thing you need to do is understand that your cash flows are going to increase year on year at a fixed rate. Fixed rate. No, they had said 9 point something, 9.18%. 9.18% cash flows are going to increase every year. Now, forget the 9.18%. If you have constant cash flows across each year, what do you call it? You call it a annuity. You call it a annuity. So, you're having now a cash flow that is growing at a constant rate. So, you call it a growing annuity. Growing annuity. So, you can either use the growing annuity formula or you can use a basic computation. Okay. So first I'll do the basic computation, then I'll do the growing annuity. Okay, I don't want to confuse you. I don't know how much you can remember from your previous modules. So we'll start from the basic computation. Okay. Basic computation. I thought year 5, year 6, year 7. එම වෙලාව නාස්ති කරන්න එපා exam එකේ, but ideal objective වෙන්න ඕනේ you score the maximum marks no. ඕන method use කරන්න පුළුවන්, but maximum marks at the minimum amount of time. Year 9 මෙහෙම කරාම පොඩ්ඩක් කර too much of time වෙලා යනවා. But understanding වලට මේක ලේසි. මෙහෙම කියලා දුන්නොත්. එතකොට net cash flow නෙමෙයි මේකට තියන්නේ cash flow. net නෙමෙයි cash flow. එතකොට year 5 you have 3032.4. හරියට බලන්න. 3332.4. What do they say? This will increase every year on year at 9.18%. එතකොට you have to increase this at 9.18% කියන්නේ 1.098 multiply කරන්න. When you do that, I have already multiplied here on my laptop. 3310.77. 3310.77. I multiply කරන්න 1.098 0981. එතකොට 3614.70. 3614.70. Year 8, 3946.53. 3946.53. Year 9, 4308.83. 4309.83. Oh, sorry. 430 point. This is 8, huh? Not 9. 4308.83. Then 4704.38. 4704.38. Then you have 5136.24. 5136.24. And year 12, 5607.74. 5607.74. Okay. Standard computations. So obviously this is pre-tax. So bring in tax element, tax at 30%. Tax at 30%. So calculate quickly. 909.72. This is minus 909.72. This is 993.23. 993.23. Then you have 1084.41. I'll put in brackets. 1183.96. Then you have 1292.65. Then you have 1411.31. Then you have 1540.87. And then you have 1682.32. Okay, so that's your taxes. But in the question, they had mentioned that you're going to get something called capital allowance. Capital allowance, right? So what is your capital allowance for the building? For the building, you had an investment of 10 million. Then your capital allowance every year for 20 years is 10 million divided by 20, which is 500 each year, into how many years? Up to 12 years, no? Up to 12 years. So I'll multiply by 12. Easy then. So this working is 10 million divided by 20, which is 500, into 12 is 6,000. So I have capital allowances total of 6,000. So which means my written down value at the end of 12 years is 4,000. Okay, we'll come to that later. So then I will add my tax allowable depreciation, or sometimes called as capital allowance. How much is my capital allowance every year? Sorry, I will give me a minute. Change this heading. So this is my tax allowable depreciation, not capital allowance. Tax allowable depreciation. So how do you find your capital allowance? Capital allowance is tax allowable depreciation into tax rate. So this is 500 each year into 30%, 150 capital allowance. My capital allowance is 150 every year. Now see, it's a pain to just keep writing 150, no? If you had used annuity, by now the exam question is over. But I'm just doing this so you understand what is happening. Otherwise, අරක කරාම, තටපට ගාලා කරාම you will get lost halfway through. So best is to do this long method for you to understand. Then we apply the shortcuts and show, this is what we did here and here and here. Okay, නැත්තම් අමාරුයි. Then okay, then you have a asset disposal. Disposal is happening in 12th year, that is at 2000. So the moment to dispose of, you are left with a balancing allowance of 2000. This balancing allowance will attract a capital allowance at 30%. It is equals to 600, right? So capital allowance on disposal, 600. Okay. And then you have finally working capital recovery. Working capital recovery. How much is your working capital? They have said 500 at the beginning of the year. And then for the next 4 years, you're going to increase it by 50, 50, 50, 50. That is a total of 700. Thereafter, it won't increase. So you're going to remove working capital of 700. Then that should be it. You can calculate your net or cash flows, net cash flows. We'll call it NCF, net cash flows. Net cash flows. So as per my computations, you get 2272.68, 2272.68. Then here you get 2467.54. Then you get 2680.29. ඔගොල්ලෝ පොඩ ලස්සන ලියන්න. 2912.57. 2912.57. That is for year 8. Then year 9, you get 3166.18. Then year 10, you get 3443.06. Sorry, 344. 344, 3.06. Then year 11, you get 3745.37. And then year 12, 7375.42. 7375.42. Okay. Then you can apply your discounting factor. They said to discount at 12 or 13%. At 13%. How do you calculate at 13%? The discounting formula is 1 over 1 plus r to the power n. Okay. Hope you can recall that. So at 13%, let's calculate to 3 decimal places or 4 decimal places. 5428. Then you have 4803. Then you have 4251. Then you have 3762. Then you have 3329. Then you have 2946. Then you have 2607. And 2307. Then you can find present value 1233.52. Then you have 1185.20 or 21. Then you have 1139.28 or 29, rounding off. 1095.59. And then you have 1053.97. Then you have 1014.28 or 29. Then you have 976.41. And finally, you have 1701.55. Okay, so that's where you end up with. Now, what you can do is add up all of that, and you get 9399.83. 9399.83. Okay. Excuse me. So you can adapt these two now. Adapt these two. You get 2905.8 or 93. 93. This is your NPV. Positive, so therefore good. Right? How many marks? 17 marks. They don't ask anything else, no? Only calculate. So out of the 17, I think you would have got 15. 15 plus previously 12, 27. 27 out of 50 is around 50%, 52%. Good, 54 rather. Okay. Any questions of anything that you want to clarify before we move on? I have to show you a shorter method of doing this, if time permits. Now it's 10:30. But I think this is good. You have 17 minutes, no? So you can do it. Sorry, 17 marks. So you can do it in this method. 17 marks is close to around how many minutes? 30 minutes, no? So you have time to complete it in this manner, but whatever you wish, you can do. So you can write a concluding comment. Since NPV is positive, we can accept the project. Okay. Every NPV question, you write that comment, whether they ask or not. What is that 600 at the last? Okay. I will explain that in a minute. I'll just give everyone 1 minute to just quickly take down if they have not finished. I will explain that once again to you. Okay. Okay. Right. I think there's a question asking us what is that last 600. So whenever you have an investment, most often, not always, whenever you have an investment, we attract something called capital allowances. Capital allowances. What is this capital allowances? It is basically a benefit that you get from the inland revenue to say that you can reduce your tax payables by this amount because of an investment you made. Because of an investment you made. So what happens in this case is, it's a simple logic like this. In the tax department, they don't accept accounting depreciation. They have something called tax allowable depreciation. They have something called tax allowable depreciation. So how do you calculate tax allowable depreciation? It can either be reducing balance method or straight line method. In this case, they have said straight line. What is a straight line method? 10,000 is my cost of the asset. I can take it over 20 years. Depreciation over 20 years. Which means I have 500 per year. This is what I call tax allowable depreciation. My capital allowance is computed as my tax allowable depreciation into tax rate. You have studied this in your previous lessons, huh? I mean, previous stages. So your tax allowable depreciation is 500. Tax rate is 30%. So you get 150. Okay. So what happens is you will accumulate this 500, 500, 500 every year for the 20 years and then your investment is completed. But what happens if you sell the investment halfway through? Now, in our scenario, 10,000 was done, investment, but my tax allowable depreciation, I had only for how many years? 12 years. So 500 into 12 is 6,000. Now, there is a balance 4,000 of my net book value or written down value, net book value. This 4,000 net book value, the Inland Revenue Department can give you an allowance. They can say, okay, you can reduce your tax by this because your project has completed earlier. But they will at the same time say, if you sell this asset, you're getting a benefit. Therefore, for that, we can't give you any tax deductions. Fair enough, no? When you sell the asset, you get an income, no? So they can't give you a tax deduction because you got an income. So what they will say is, okay, if you can't sell this asset, on this entire 4,000, we will give you a relief. What is that relief? On this entire 4,000, they will give you at 30% a relief. So 3 into 4 is 12,200, they'll give you relief. 1,200, right? My math is correct. Yeah, 1,200. How did you come up with this 1,200? Think logically. 12 years are done. No? There is another 8 years to go. 8 years to go. 8 years to go in the sense every year you're getting 150. 150 into 8, I think is 1,200. Double check. Huh? Double check. 1,200. So ideally they will tell you, okay, in the final year, since you have no 8 years to go, you have completed your project. This 1,200 will give it to you in the final year, year 12. But if you decide to sell the project, they will say, hold on. You can't take this entire 1,200. We will give you the opportunity to sell your asset. Whatever remains after that, we call it balancing allowance. If it is a positive value, it's called balancing allowance. Negative value is called balancing charge. On this 2,000, you can claim 30% tax relief. That is 600. In case this was 5,000. In case this was 5,000. Then what happens? Then I have a negative value of 1,000. Then what happens? The inland revenue will say, hey, look here, come here. You come here. You made a profit of this investment. How? Profit? Net book value 4,000. I sold for 5,000. Profit 1,000. Hey, come here, come here. That 1,000, you need to pay me tax of 300. You need to pay me tax. Inland revenue puts in the pocket. Mr. Deshapriya, have I answered your question? Okay, I hope you're happy and everybody else is happy and your parents and everybody at home are also happy. Okay, I believe everybody is listening to the lecture. Okay, good. Now we have roughly 20 minutes to complete the rest of the question. Out of time. Okay, back to the question. Oops. Okay, so how many marks shall we give ourselves here? I said we'll give ourselves 15 marks, no? 15 marks, 12 marks. Now this has gone to 27, which is 54% done. See, ideally, in the question A itself, you can pass the paper, no? You can pass the paper. Whatever you do in section B is actually carry forward marks for you to go to, Sri Lanka rank number 1, Sri Lanka rank number 2, number 3. Okay. Ideally, student from Infinity will become the number 1, no? Okay. Right. So number 2 and number 3 also has to be from Infinity. Number 1 I know will be from one of these students here in the class today. But number 2 and 3 also has to be from the same class. Huh? I don't know who, but somebody. Good. No pressure. No pressure. I always tell students, go to the exam like you're going to a park. Or Vihara Mahadevi නැත්තම් මේ කොහෙද? Peradeniya Botanical Gardens. එයාදී කොහමද යන්නේ? carefree නේ යන්නේ. Carefree. Right? ඔහේ ඇවිදිනවා. අන්න ඒ වගේ තමයි එක්සෑම් එකට ගිහිල්ලා වාඩි වෙලා මේ වතුර ටිකක් බීලා ගොඩක් ෆ්‍රී එකේ ඉන්න ඕනේ එක්සෑම් එක. because අර too much pressure අරගෙන stress දාගෙන ඒව එක්සෑම් එකට ගියාම ඉතින් ලියන්නත් බෑ හිතන්නත් බෑ කොහොමත් calculations කරන්නත් බෑ. so එක්සෑම් එකට යද්දි පොඩ්ඩක් අර නිදහසේ යන්න ඕනේ. හරි. ෆ්‍රී එකේ ගිහිල්ලා මේ අර පොඩක් රිලැක්ස් එකේ ඉඳලා වාඩි වෙලා එක්සෑම් එක කරන්න ඕනේ. අර ස්ට්‍රෙස් දාගෙන මේක ෆේල් වුණොත් මම මැරෙනවා හෙට. එහෙම හිතලා කරන්න එපා. ඒතොර කොහොමත් ෆේල් වෙනවා. නමුත් මැරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ෆේල් වුණා කියලා. Okay. So go to the exam comfortably, right? And then you do the exam. මම නම් ඇත්තටම කියනවා ස්ටුඩන්ට්ස් ලාට මේ ඔබ පුළුවන් නම් සරමක් අහලා ඇඳගෙන යන්න if it's comfortable for you. If it's a boy, yeah, I don't know about girls. But boys නම් මේ wear comfortable clothes. මම නම් ඇත්තටම exam එකට යද්දී I go with my most comfortable clothes. සරමක් දාගෙන යන්න බෑ exam එකට. But I go in the most comfortable clothes. Right? I tell some of my friends also, I don't understand. සමහර කට්ටිය මේකප් උත් දාගෙන යන exam එකට. I don't understand. But මම නම් ඇත්තටම most comfortable clothes. T-shirt එකක් දාගත්තා. එක්කෝ ෂෝට් එකක් නැත්තම් කලිසමක් දාගත්තා ගියා එක්සෑම් එකට. ලිව්වා ආවා. comfortable. එකම දේ මම කවදාවත් drive කරලා යන්නේ නැහැ එක්සෑම් එකට. Okay? Why? Because accidents can happen on the road, no? I don't know where you're traveling from and all that. But පුළුවන් තරම් බයික් වල යන්න එපා එක්සෑම් වලට. හරිද? එක්කෝ වහින්න පුළුවන්. බයික් එකේ යද්දි වහින්න පුළුවන්. නැත්තම් ලිස්සලා වැටෙන්න පුළුවන්. නැත්තම් කවුරු හරි ආලෝ හප්පන්න පුළුවන්. so එතකොට අර එක්සෑම් එකට යද්දි පොඩ්ඩක් එක්කෝ බස් එකේ යන්න නැත්තම් ටුක් එකේ නැත්තම් ඇවිදගෙන හරි යන්න නැත්තම් කාට හරි කියන්න ඔයා ගිහලා බස් ගන්න කියලා. නමුත් අර I of course avoid to drive. whether I had a bike or a car මම නම් වාහනේ තියලා තමයි එක්සෑම් එකට යන්නේ. දැන් ළඟදී MBA තිබ්බා. MBA එකේ කවදාවත් මම drive කරේ නැහැ එක්සෑම් එකට. බයික් එක ගෙදර තිබ්බා. වාහනේ ගෙදර තිබ්බා. drive කරන්නේ නැහැ. යනවා මේ ටුක් එකේ. නැත්තම් බස් එකේ. නැත්තම් යාළුවෙක්ට කියන මාව දාගෙන යන්න කියලා. හරි strategy. That is strategy. Because if you go to the exam කියමුකෝ දැන් බයික් එකේ යනවා එක්සෑම් එකට ටක් ටක් දාලා සද්දයක් එනවා. then බලද්දි චේන එක කැඩිලා දැන් මොකද කරන්නේ? චේන් එක දාගෙන ඊට පස්සේ එක්සෑම් එකට යන්න බෑනේ බයික් එකේ. ඕම බයික් එක තිබ්බා අතන. ඊට පස්සේ ඔය එක්සෑම් එකට යනවා. එක්සෑම් එකට ගිහලා ඊට පස්සේ හිතෙනවා බයික් එක අප්පසේ අද කොහෙද දැම්මේ දන්නේ නැහැ නේ පාර්ට්ස් ගලවනවත් දන්නේ නැහැ. අර පංචිකාව පැත්තේ දැම්මොත් ඉවරයි බයික් එක. so ඒව පොඩ්ඩක් හිතන්න හරිද? එක්සෑම් එකට යද්දි පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න මේ එලවන්න නැතුව ක්‍රමයක් තියනවාද එක්සෑම් එකට යන්න හෝල් එකට යන්න. ඒවත් වැදගත්. How should online exam students get prepared? Please advise. අපට සිරි. මම හිතන්නේ විනාඩි 20ක් මම ඇඩ්වයිස් කරා ඒකට. නමුත් I don't know whether you joined late පුතා. Okay. So this is recorded. පොඩ්ඩක් rewind කරලා first 20 minutes ටික බලන්න. ඒත් තව ප්‍රශ්නයක් තිබ්බොත් මට කියන්න මම ආයි විස්තර කරන්නම්. නමුත් විනාඩි 20ක් ගත කරා ඒව explain කරන්න. Okay. Part B, we'll do part B, assess how the proposed financing strategy interacts with AIS's sustainability objectives. දැන් sustainability objectives කියලා විස්තර කරලා නැහැ මෙතන exam question එකේ case study එකේ. නමුත් දැන් we will have to figure out some sustainability things what they had mentioned. They had mentioned, no? Sorry, they had mentioned. Carbon footprint එක අඩු කරන එක, usage, අර circular model, ඊට පස්සේ whatever, something like that they had mentioned, right? So ඒ ටික කොහොමද අපි sustainability objectives, regulatory exposure and long-term value creation, and formulate a reasoned judgment on the key trade-offs faced by the board of directors. What should you do first? What should you do first? මතක නැහැ. මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ? Highlight the word and. Highlight the word and. So this and formulate කියන්නේ මෙතනින් it's a different question. This and is you have one item here, two items here, three items here. තුනම ලියන්න ඕනේ. How much are they giving? 6 marks. So probably they're giving you 1 mark, 2 marks, 1 and 1 here. So 3 marks here. Probably they're giving you 3 marks somewhere here. I don't know the breakdown. Okay, it's a reasonable judgment. Okay, so assess how the proposed financing strategy interacts with AIS's sustainability objectives. Okay, we'll write down sustainability objective. What were the sustainability objectives? That is for carbon emission reduction and what's the other one? I can't remember also. They had mentioned carbon emission reduction, cradle to cradle, something like that, right? Circular economy, reducing waste, energy usage and carbon intensity. Okay, let's write down something. Okay, so what are they going to do? They're going to borrow debt, but that debt is going to be linked to sustainability objectives, right? So it's sustainability linked debt. So we can write down there, you can say part B, and you can put a small pointer to say sustainability alignment objectives. Sustainability objectives. Sustainability objectives. So you can say there, the company is issuing sustainability linked debt. The company is issuing sustainability linked debt, which indicates their commitment, to sustainability targets, such as carbon reductions or carbon emission reductions, Full stop and say, however, in the event the targets are missed, then what happens? Then it can bring reputational damage. can bring reputational damage. Which can result in further increases in cost of debt. And second one, you can say regulatory exposure. Regulatory exposure. Regulatory exposure. Sustainability linked debt. Sustainability linked debt will bring about regulatory scrutiny. Will bring about regulatory scrutiny or scrutinity. I don't know how you word it, but scrutinity. Mainly on carbon reporting. And traceability. Full stop and say improved. No, not improved. Rather say uh, consistent ESG reporting. Can reduce long-term risks. But unreliable data could lead to compliance risks and potential penalties. Third one, long-term value creation. Now, when you're writing at the exam, ensure that you write like this. එතකොට exam මෙන්න දන්නවා මෙතන මේක answer කරලා තියෙනවා. Sustainability objectives, regulatory කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. Long term value එකත් touch කරලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට සමහර විට examiner මේ ඔක්කොම කියවන්න නැතුවත් ඒ mark දෙන්න මේ පුළුවන් වෙයි. Okay? So think like that. Make life easy for the examiner. කොහොම steps ටික ලියා ගන්න, headings ටික underline කරන්න. Keep enough space. Free නේ papers දෙන්නවට ලියන්න. හරිද? Evaluate, sorry, a long-term value creation. You can say that the link to sustainability serves the request of multinational customers. Increasing the competitive advantage. Resulting in higher long-term value. Okay, the last part is they are saying trade-offs faced by the board of directors. So we can say trade-offs faced by the board, small heading, trade-offs faced by the board. So what is the trade-off faced by the board? Doing this is good but also bad. So sustainability linked debt, sustainability linked debt will bring long-term value creation, will bring long-term value creation and help achieve sustainable objectives. But has to be ensured, has to be ensured that no compromise, on financial risk and investor confidence. No compromise on financial risk and investor confidence. Okay. So we have done up to part C now, that is 37 marks completed. We have 13 more marks to go. Right? So method 9 plus 4, 30. So we'll have to stop there due to some time limitations I am facing today. But we'll come back next session and complete the paper. Right? So we'll need at least another 3.5 to 4 hours to complete the paper. All 4 questions to be done. I hope you understand how it is being done, right? And any further questions, please ask. You can type in the chat box anytime. So I'll plan the next session and let you know the time. We're going to complete the entire paper. So we'll complete these 3 questions and then we'll go to section B, right? So we'll do one session, one online session to cover all 3. It will be a longer session. Today the time restriction is for me, so we'll plan the next one, which is roughly around 3.5 to 4 hours. We will need a time. I'll give a break maybe in between, 10 minutes to just refresh and come back, and we'll complete the paper and then we'll go for the exam. Okay. Right. So for now, I will stop there. You're asking me whether the video will be uploaded to Infinity Portal. I need to check with the Infinity management. I hope they will, and if they do, then it will be there. Okay. Right. So till then, I'll see you next time. Keep studying. Thank you for joining in today. Hope you enjoyed today's session.